Today I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the projects that I'm involved in, some of the areas that I work in the commercial section of GRDC. I want to run through a couple of different project areas. First of all, one that's going to end up in a product in the short term, and secondly we'll look at a platform technology, and then some new exciting material that you guys haven't seen yet I want to share with you today as well. So first of all I want to talk a little bit about a product that we're developing for Diamondback moth. Now the reason I'm talking to you guys, even though Diamondback moth's not a big issue for you up here, is that I want you to get a feel for how we bring new concepts into GRDC, how we respond to issues. In this particular case, the members of the Southern panel came to me back in 2010 and said, look, we've got a real problem with Diamondback in canola. We have a limited choice of products. In fact, one or two of the products are either disappearing off the shelf altogether, or we have resistance issues, or we're also having some issues with MRLs, going over the top on MRLs. We need a new product and we need something rather quickly. So the first thing we do in GRDC is to work through and understand the scope and the size of the issue, understand what is it actually costing the industry, how big, when does the problem occur, who else is doing something. So go and have a chat to some of the chemical companies and get a feel for what chemistry is coming through in the next few years. We did that, and there are a couple of products coming through, but unfortunately a number of them aren't going to fit the IPM model that a lot of the guys in the canola are wanting to run. Some of them are going to be very hard on the predatory bugs, so they need something that's going to work there, and they also don't want something that's going to knock over their bee population as well. So starting to go through the options. The first thing the Southern panel asked for was a BT canola. They said that'll fix it, so we don't have to spray anything, we just plant it, away we go. Until I shared with them that around the world Diamondback moth is already resistant to every one of the BT genes. We'll probably get 2 seasons out of it before it fell over. It's going to cost you $50 million to get it in the industry in terms of deregulation, and that's not even the deregulation in all of your customers. And it's also going to take probably about 15 years to go through the regulatory pathways, so not an option. New chemical actives, as I said before, there's some coming through, but we don't have enough, and I don't think they're going to fit exactly what we need. Cultural practices, there really aren't any. We did have a good look at what are the things we could do to manage Diamondback. Could we do other crops alongside that might attract them? No, they love canola, and there's no getting away from that. We looked at some microbial products. I have quite a range in my portfolio of development of things like metarhizium, which is coming along pretty well, but it doesn't suit this type of insect. It's not particularly effective on some of the lepidopteras. We looked at parasitoids, so these are predatory wasps and the such around the world. We couldn't find anything there that was going to be ideal either as a biological control release. So the last option there is the viral product, and that's the one that we're exploring. So you guys in this area in particular would be understanding of the use of viruses. What we like about them in terms of them resistance management, they fit into most programs very effectively. You can use them early and use them often, and that's something that you don't say about a lot of the heavy chemistry. You can get in there and use them consistently right through a whole program. We haven't seen any resistance as yet to these viruses, and the way that we're actually working on them, I don't think we will see resistance occurring easily if we keep mixing up the biotypes of the virus. The particular virus area we're looking at for Diamondback moth is a slightly different type of virus. It's a granulovirus. They are very specific to the pest itself. There are native populations of these granuloviruses out there already, and we've already gone and found some. They work really well in IPM strategies. They won't interfere with anything else. The cost of regulation is actually pretty acceptable. It's not too expensive to bring a virus product through because they're reasonably well understood. And we also have quite a lot of buy-in from some of the other industries. The Horty guys are really keen to have another gun in their arsenal as well, and that will help the cost of regulation and also potentially spread out the amount of product that's being sold, and that helps the whole thing fly as well. Just to give you a bit of a feel for what a chemical pipeline looks like, this is the one that I stole from the Syngenta website. But you can see up there that the total cost to bring a new active to market is somewhere around the €200 million, and this is old, so it's probably well over 240, 250 by now. And this is where they start off with 140,000 actives and they end up with one. It's a pretty expensive and very long process to get to what you want. You're looking at there at 10 to 15 years for a new active. What's also changed is back when these things sort of started getting going in the chemical world, most of the work that we spent was up in the top section, that blue section there. It was about developing up a product. Then the field trials and so forth, that'd chew up a bit of your money. But what's really changed in the recent years is this bottom section. It's the cost of regulation, getting through that the tox studies. That's what's really causing the expense, and also is turning a lot of the companies away from developing new products, particularly for smaller crops or smaller issues in terms of pest and disease. So where are we at the moment with this product? We have a host-specific virus. We have a number of them that we've screened and found to work well. We have two companies involved with us, an Australian company and an international company. We have partnerships in place, and we aim to actually have a product in the market by 2016-17. So it's been a really successful piece of research at the moment. If we can get it out the door, it's going to be a great opportunity, I think, for the canola growers of Australia. The next thing I want to talk about is a platform technology. So as opposed to coming out with a product that's finished and finalised and we just license it to somebody, this is going back and actually working on the basics of getting a new technological step forward. So you guys will be very familiar with IR. Infrared is used across the whole ag industry. In fact, agriculture has really picked up IR in a big way compared to almost every other industry. Whether it's in your grain analyzers or whether it's in your green seekers, weed seekers, those types of things, it's pretty broadly used and it's very effective. But it has some issues. We'd love to use it more, but at the moment the cost, the units themselves are very expensive. They're not very robust. You give either one of these a decent clout or you drop it and you pretty much kill it because it's based on optics. As soon as those optics go out of alignment, you lose your calibrations and it's useless. Also, the speed at which they actually take a reading, they're too damn slow. In some cases, to do a full wavelength reading across the area you're looking, the spectrum you're looking at, can take up to a minute for each reading. Now, if you're wanting to take lots and lots of readings and average them, it's going to take you a long time and it's going to have a lot of data. So this is what the optics look like in some of those machines. They range from anywhere around $2,000 or $3,000 up to about $30,000 worth just for that piece, and that's probably the weakest part of the whole IR story. So when I met with the guys in University of WA, I said to them I want something that's going to be faster, so it has to read in microseconds, not in minutes. It has to be robust, ideally so it can go into farm type equipment, so handheld things that can be dropped and kicked and left on the back of the ute. It needs to be cheap, $100 or less for the actual components inside, and small. I want everything on a chip under 1 centimetre in size. So it was a fairly big ask, but they were up for the challenge. Where we are at the moment is we have a chip. They've developed a chip to date. It's very different to anything that's ever come on the market before. At the moment it's about 200 nanometres across, so it's about 12 human hairs. It has a dual-faced mirror, and the whole thing sits inside that little tiny chip there, which is about 1 centimetre across. So we're well on our way to providing a new baseline technology. So what are we going to do with it once we've got it? And what sort of breakthrough will this actually have in agriculture? If you look at what this does, it's something that's self-tuning, so it's able to tune right across the spectrum, will give us a whole range of different measurements we can take. If you look at how these things work traditionally, they take a measurement at each point, and in some cases the old technology were locked, so you could only take one device, one wavelength. This one will actually tune across all the wavelengths, and you'll end up with a small instrument like this. So we're developing, I suppose you could call them dumb probes. We don't want to put a lot of energy into developing all the processing power and the battery and all those types of things in a piece of equipment. We really just want to measure things in terms of the IR and let the instrument companies deal with the rest. So where will this end up? If we can have something, as I said, as a dumb probe that plugs into something like your iPhone, that can provide the power, the processing. It also gives GPS relevance and all those types of things as well. And we can see a whole range of instruments that will change the way that you guys do your business. whether it's looking at a soil probe, which we're starting to work on at the moment. Ideally, we want something that'll go down to 60 centimetres. It'll take a reading at 10 centimetre intervals, and it'll tell you both moisture and nitrogen in the soil. We're looking at a small handheld device that will actually measure nitrogen in leaf. So the combination of the two will tell you exactly where you're up to in terms of your crop needs, and it will give you a good understanding of how much N you're going to need to apply when the next rain front comes through. The other sort of opportunities we can see occurring is things like measuring moisture or phosphine in your silo. Having a whole series of these little tiny devices through your silo complex will allow you to understand where your moisture front is as you're drying your grain out, or it might help you understand where the phosphine is and what sort of levels it's at, and how much you're applying at any one time, and that will be enormously helpful. We can also look at things like having it inline as processing in your processing, so you can actually start to segregate different percentages of protein and blend and mix and put products out to a specific need. The next thing I want to talk about today is the Harrington Seed Destructor. So some of you have heard a little bit about this before. I want to take you right back to where we started, which is with a stationary mill. Now, I'm not sure whether there's been much talk today about the whole concept of harvest weed management and managing the seed bank at harvest, but this was really coming out of the guys in the West when they started to look at up to 80%, 90% of their weed seeds were being collected every year in their harvester and then thrown out the back and spread around. So you've just managed to develop a really nice resistant weed, and there you go, the trouble of spreading it all over your paddock again. There had to be a better way, and they've gone through the track of using chaff carts, windrows, narrow windrow burning, all of those sort of technologies that come along, but at the end of the day, they're pretty hard. No one likes to get out there and burn their paddocks. No one wants another job at that time of the year. Chaff carts is another piece of gear. So we had to come up with something that was actually going to do the job and destroy the weed seed on the spot as it ran. We understood that, or Ray Harrington, the inventor of the machine, understood that really it was about impact. You can grind up seeds through a hammer mill or those types of things, but that's too slow and cumbersome. So he found an old cage mill out of the mining industry that's used for busting up coal and iron ore. And he put that onto a motor, as you can see on the PTO there, and he fed the chaff in from a chaff cart and found that it was very effective at destroying the seed in the chaff. He then decided that it had to go on the harvester, or in the back of the harvester, so he built himself a fairly rough and ready sort of a machine. There's a lot of baling twine and fencing wire on it, but it worked. He had an old header motor on it, and it ran at about 2,000 RPM, and ground up the chaff section that was coming out the back, and then spread the straw at the back there. Now Ray came to GRDC saying, well, I've invented this thing and it's working just fine on my farm, but that's pretty much as far as I can really take it. If this is going to go commercial and help a lot of other growers, then I need some help. And that's when GRDC decided to step in and take over the project. So we took it to a number of engineering companies and worked with them, and we've had a number of prototypes over the years. This was the first one that we built, which was substantially larger than Ray's, was able to cope with a lot more chaff. We then moved to something that was able to cope with large amounts of chaff, but also was weighing a lot less, and it was running a lot faster. So we took it down by about a tonne in doing that. Now this machine was coping very nicely with about a Class 6, Class 7 header in terms of chaff output. But at the end of the day, it is still a large mill with a large engine, and it's an extra piece of gear that most growers really don't want to have to cope with on their farm. So we licensed that product out so we could get it going, get it into the market. And those are the three prototypes you can see there, and you can see that these guys, this is Burren from Mount Gambier in South Australia that are producing these commercially. They're doing a great job. The product's a very nice, neat, finished product. But really, GRDC felt that we had to go another step. For starters, we needed to work on getting a larger machine to cope with larger harvesters. So we started working with the University of South Australia, and we took it right back to the basics, understanding what it was that was killing the seed. It's the number of impacts, the size of the impact, and the speed at which the impact occurs. Once we understood that process, we could build a mill that was really just designed to do that, as opposed to building something that's designed to bust up coal and really over-engineer it. We were able to scale it back to something that was really just designed to kill weed seeds. So once we understood how the technology was going to work, we were able to work out what's the optimal level of killing of weed seeds that we can actually get in the system, what's acceptable, what's the volume of chaff. Now, a lot of guys can tell you roughly what the straw plus chaff volume coming out the back is, but very few people can tell you out of a certain crop how much chaff is actually coming out the back of their header. We had to do a lot of work to try and find that out. And we also then had to look at the kill rate on various different mills and different scales and different speeds, and look at the power requirement. How much was it going to take to run those? So the next step was, how do we process more volume? As I said, at class 9, use less power. We wanted to actually really have it run by the header as opposed to having another whopping big motor. And how do we avoid the straw and chaff transfer issues? Straw and chaff is a bit of a bugger to try and move, whether you do it pneumatically or whether you do it with an auger. It doesn't flow particularly well, so we had to come up with some novel ways of dealing with that. And ideally it had to integrate the whole thing into the header. So this is where the guy's measuring chaff coming out the back, trying to get an idea of volume, and then the number of seeds in there and how many are being killed. So where are we now? We understand exactly what's required to kill weed seeds in a mill. We understand the relationship between the grain, the chaff, the mill speed and the kill rates, and we've modelled all of those. And we've designed a new system, built it, and now we've field tested it. So the new system actually sits at the back of the harvester, up underneath, just behind the back wheel there, but in front of the spreader. It's taking all of the chaff straight off the back and feeding it into 2 mills. It's a little bit hard to see in this light, but the 2 mills sit tucked up underneath there, and they're run hydraulically off the motor itself. And you can see it there. This is the first field trials we went out and had in beginning of January this year. And it performed really well. We were able to get up to about 35, 40 tonne an hour going through the header and grain, and the mill didn't skip a beat. We were able to get complete weed seed kill, around 90% at least. In some cases, we think we've actually gotten better than that. So now it's going to be all about how much can you get in the front. And a lot of guys you'll be talking to, like Mike Walsh and others, are now talking about how low do you put your cutter bar, what weeds are you chasing and when. Do you go in earlier to try and make sure you get the weeds before they drop their seed? But regardless, at the back, we think we've got the technology right now. The last thing I wanted to just touch on, I've got a little video to show you on the Harrington, but I just wanted to touch very quickly, last minute, on variety ID and purity. A technology that was developed last year, which is a DNA-based test for variety ID and for purity, has now been released for barley. I'd really encourage you guys to have a bit of a look at it. I know that in the north, many people have said to me that they didn't really see a place for purity testing, they didn't really see a need for it. But what I wanted to share with you today was the figures that we got from our recent survey of wheat samples. We did about 2,000 samples across Australia. As you can see here, when you look down at the one that says D there, the red, 10% of our samples out there were not what they thought they were. Now this is seed not coming from the depot, this is seed coming out of farmers' silos prior to sowing. 10% of them didn't know exactly what they had. 11% of the samples out there were of the variety they thought they had, but it wasn't good enough for sowing. It was less than 90% pure, therefore it has anything up to 10% contamination of another variety. Now, that might not sound like a huge amount, but when you start to talk to some of the pathologists about what sort of risks you run when you have that, it's pretty scary. If you've got a highly tolerant variety and you suddenly mix in something that's very susceptible, this is going to cause you an issue. As you can see also, 4% didn't even get to the 90%. And that's pretty scary that it was the variety they thought it was, but it was so impure that it wasn't even really looking like the variety it should be looking like. So I would encourage you, we have the barley test, as I said, up and running now with grain growers. We should have wheat within about 3 or 4 weeks, we hope. The testing's somewhere around $120, I believe, for a sample, about 200 grams. If you send them the sample, it should be about 10 to 15 days to get a result back. So Any of you that feel that you're not entirely sure what some of those labels were on the silos, or you're just not entirely sure about the seed that you bought off your neighbour, it's worth getting a test. And maybe if you're going to go and buy some seed, you should ask them whether they've got a certificate to show what they've got as well. Thanks for your time today. I'll just quickly see if I can get this video to work. So this is the Harrington Seed Destructor in an integrated model as tested in South Australia this season. As you can see, the mill itself is just churning out that dust just before the spreader, and that's taking the particle size down to a couple of mil, and it's certainly grinding up any weed seeds that are coming through in that chaff section. Thanks very much.